Good evening, everyone, and welcome into this KX News special, Murder Mystery, A Cry for Justice. An 18-year-old question with still no answer just yet. Who killed Anita Knutson? I'm Kiara Brown. Thank you for joining us tonight. This billboard behind me, a clear picture that even today, the community of Minot's still hoping for answers and justice for Anita. Over the next half hour, we're taking a deep dive into the investigation of her death, the evidence in the case, the suspects over the years, and the breakthroughs that led to an arrest in the case as the prime suspect goes to trial. The information presented to you tonight are accounts from previous reports done on this case and our own personal investigations. There is currently a gag order in place, which means anyone connected to the criminal case is not allowed to talk to the media. Nichole Rice, previously known as Nicole Thomas, is set to stand trial for her roommate's murder in just a few days. Rice has always maintained her innocence, not just since she was arrested, but since she was first questioned back in 2007. June 4th, 2007. A quiet late spring day here in the city of Minot. It was summer break for 18-year-old Anita Knutson, who had just finished her freshman year at Minot State University. But the quietness of that weekend became concerning for Anita's father, Gordon Knutson, who headed to her apartment to check on his daughter after not hearing from her for days.
The police responded when her father called it in because he had not heard from her in a couple of days, which was unusual for the father and daughter.
His daughter, lifeless in her bed, dead from stab wounds.
We don't have a whole lot of violent crime, especially back in the, mid-2000s. It was something that was pretty rare.
Perry Olson is a former anchor reporter with KX News. He and the KX News team covered the events and investigation extensively and for several years afterwards. Captain Dale Plessis with the Minot Police Department was on duty that day in 2007. He got the call at the end of his shift and was the first officer to arrive on scene. There, they found Anita with 2 stab wounds to her body, one to her right lung and the other, the fatal stab wound, to her heart. Investigators searched the crime scene for clues, but came up with more questions than answers.
There's not a lot of big bloody mess. There's not a lot of stuff done seemingly beforehand or after, so there's no post-mortem assault of the body or anything like that. So in terms of the event that happened, pretty straightforward. In terms of the investigation and evidence, really messy. Not that they messed anything up, just there's not a lot there to identify who might have done this.
Dr. Chad Linton is the director of the Criminal Justice Department and the chair of Behavioral Sciences at the University of Mary. He's looked extensively at the Anita Knutson murder case and what he calls the lack of evidence. Police records show nothing in Anita's apartment was missing. And investigators say they found no signs of a sexual assault. But the alleged murder weapon was found, a silver lock blade discovered under Anita's quilt with just a trace of DNA on it. That lack of DNA, a big part of why her murder case goes cold for nearly 15 years.
We have this college student from Velva, 19 miles down the road, who has been murdered. And that's what we know, right? There wasn't an imminent arrest right away. We didn't totally know what was going on. The police didn't know, and it's not a shot at the police at all. It was hard to know what was going on, and to think that there was perhaps someone out there who had done this that was not apprehended, I think, made people worry a little bit.
Police questioned several suspects, but no arrests were made.
Weeks turned into months and months into years, and It was just kind of one that was out there. I can't imagine what it was like for the family.
Through the years, Anita's family and friends kept her memory alive, placing billboards around town, creating a Justice for Anita Facebook page, and even writing a story remembering her in the local paper every year.
As the 10th anniversary approaches, Anita Knutson's family and police reflect.
Nearly 15 years go by, and still no arrests in the case. But that all changed in March of 2022. That's when the Minot Police Department reached out to the popular reality TV series Cold Justice. The series follows a team of investigators who try to crack this cold case. They look at the suspects, sort through the evidence, and recreate the crime scene. Here's what the former Minot police chief at the time had to say.
We tried to actively investigate Anita's case for the past few years, and finally, with the help of Cold Justice, we were able to move forward and regain focus.
Investigators determined the only way someone could have entered the apartment is if they had a key or came through the window.
It in some ways, as a scene, because of the staging, looks potentially planned. The kind of screen that's in that window, the sort of weak aluminum of that would bend, or the whole thing would pop out if somebody of any size tried to go through that window. It's also, as an entrance point, it's a weird height to try to just jump, like to cut and jump in that window would be difficult.
Investigators say Anita's blood was found on the screen of the window, which had been cut, indicating it had been cut after Anita was stabbed. Investigators at the time say the evidence also showed the person who killed Anita likely used a key when leaving the apartment. Police questioned more than 100 people following the murder. When Cold Justice looked at Anita's former roommate, Nichole Rice, they uncovered different witness accounts and changing alibis from her. So police make their move.
Now, after nearly 15 years of investigating and following up on leads, and the suspect is in custody. At about 3:25 p.m., 34-year-old Nichole Rice was arrested for murder and taken to Ward County Jail. Although most of the detectives who worked the original scene and investigation have retired, we have not forgotten about this case.
Coming up next on A Cry for Justice. Nichole Rice is arrested 3 months shy of the 15th anniversary of Anita's death. The big question now, what led investigators to charge her with murder? We'll take a look at why some say lies may have been the breaking point in the case. Over the years, a total of 6 people became prime suspects. Everyone from the apartment handyman to the man she last texted before she died. And even a friend of Anita's that was in love with her. But it didn't end there. Nichole's defense team also tried highlighting another suspect that an FBI report identifies. Take a look. Anita Knutson was a student here at Minot State University. And for years, police chased leads, questioning dozens of suspects. But still, no arrests were made. During the first weekend of June in 2007, Anita's family headed to Bismarck for a sports tournament for her brother. However, Anita stayed behind to work over the weekend at the Fairfield Hotel. Saturday arrives, but Anita didn't show up for her shift, and her family begins to worry. The day passes, and Monday comes. Police reports show that's when the maintenance man, Marty Annell, at Anita's apartment, sees a damaged screen on Anita's window. He reportedly takes it off to repair it. At this point, Anita's family sends her dad, Gordon, to check on her. When he arrives, he knocks on the front door, which is the only entrance to the apartment. There's no answer, and the door is locked. He finds the maintenance man and tells him It's an emergency, and they need to unlock Anita's apartment, which is when he found her dead, looking through her window. In a previous interview with KX News, her sister sat down with us.
It was definitely a hard moment for me to kind of see my dad be so taken back by something and vulnerable and just like quiet.
Several suspects come into view and start to be investigated. We know Tyler took Anita to prom, lives in the same apartment complex, and admitted to police later that he was in love with Anita. Following her death, created a Justice for Anita Facebook page. Police questioned Tyler and his brother, who was living with him, several times. They cooperate, hand over DNA samples, and are ultimately ruled out as suspects. The medical examiner determined Anita's cause of death was from blood loss due to the stab wounds, and that she died somewhere in the early morning hours on Sunday. A witness told police they saw someone running from the apartment building around that time. Police released a sketch, and a man came forward saying that drawing looked like him and that he runs in the area in the mornings. Police questioned him, took his DNA, but he was also excluded from the profile.
Definitely I remember it standing out as it's just being different because of the fact that, you know, there wasn't a suspect, right? You know, there was talk of maybe there was a person running down the street, or and some of these leads kind of didn't go anywhere.
He's from Montana and was arrested for armed robbery with a knife. Hall was also questioned about Anita's murder, but denies any involvement. The FBI then starts a profile case, to which it states Devin Hall is the most likely suspect in Anita's murder.
It names the likelihood of some people, and apparently Hall is in that document, whereas the roommate is not in that document. Profiles are not answers. They're, you know, based on what we see, here's the statistical likelihood of this particular kind of psychological behavior happening.
Police then determine whoever killed Anita most likely had to have had a key. That leaves Nichole Rice, the landlady, and the maintenance man. Marty Annell, the maintenance man, is questioned by police several times. They wonder how it's possible for Marty to have taken the screen off the window that morning and not have seen Anita dead in her bed. Even though his DNA doesn't match the profile, police still continue to question Marty repeatedly in the months after her murder.
His cooperation with the investigation would be unusual for somebody who was a first-time killer.
Michael Van and Anita met at a Denny's a few months before her murder. He wanted a relationship with Anita, and he was the last person to text her before her murder. The pair exchanged a text chain around 4:30 in the morning on Sunday, with Anita sending the last text she would ever send at 4:48 a.m. Mike texts her back at 4:52 a.m., but that text shows that it was never read. Police question Mike. He cooperates, gives DNA willingly, and took 2 polygraph tests, passing both. Rice is questioned by police several times, but has the alibi that she was in Velva all weekend. She initially told police that she was best friends with Anita and that they were inseparable. However, Nichole's friends painted a different picture. They tell police after Anita's murder, Nichole was more upset about a missing iPod than the news of her roommate being found dead. They also tell police she was having problems with Anita, and Anita felt unsafe at their apartment. Then, police find text messages between Nichole and Anita just weeks before her murder. Police determined Nichole Rice had access to the apartment and could have a motive to kill Anita. They also determined later that DNA testing shows Rice can't fully be excluded from the DNA found on the murder weapon. Police are now honing in on Rice and the most damning piece of evidence they say they had against her. There's plenty more still ahead on A Cry for Justice, including that evidence and a recap of what's happened in the courtroom this far. Stay with us. A young woman who had her entire life ahead of her, with dreams of becoming a teacher. Those dreams sadly ended on June 4th, 2007 for Anita. While the years went on, people still talked about her case in the small towns of Minot and right here in Velva, where her and Nichole went to high school. There are three main parts to it: the crime scene, the suspects, and the witness accounts after Anita was murdered.
It's one of those big stories that it was a big deal when it happened, and it stayed in everyone's mind for a long, long time.
But without an arrest and no solid suspects, investigators run into a wall until they hear from witnesses that Nichole Rice admitted to killing Anita while at a party in 2008. Investigators dig deeper and determine the only people who could confirm Rice's alibi is her immediate family.
She's changed her story. When she was drunk, she had this confrontation at a party and was like, okay, fine, I did it. Is that really an admission of guilt? Right? So if you get enough...
See it as an admission of guilt?
If she's belligerently drunk, if she is just really confrontational as a drunk, and enough people are pushing her around the edges, she might just say she did it. She might just blurt it out.
Nichole's first accounts to police was that she arrived at her parents' house and farm on Saturday morning, and that she stayed the weekend. She claims she never left the farm until she left for work Monday morning, the morning Anita was found dead. Nichole then changed her story after her aunt told police she was at a bar in Russo Saturday night. Nichole said she went to the bar, which her aunt owned, with her cousin to attend a family party, then went back to her aunt's house to watch a movie.
Nichole's statements have been inconsistent from the start. They've changed drastically from not seeing Anita to seeing Anita to not being in Minot at all over the weekend to now coming back to Minot on Saturday night after she left the bar.
It is entirely possible that each one of those persons thinks and remembers it exactly that way. It's also possible that parents would want to cover for their child.
But in the end, the differing alibis, contention between Anita and Nichole, all leads investigators to believe that Nichole is responsible, and they charge her with Anita's murder. And on March 17th, 2022, Nichole is arrested and taken into custody.
We tried to actively investigate Anita's case for the past few years, and finally, with the help of cold justice, we were able to move forward and regain focus. Due to the resources, logistics, planning, and experts they were able to provide, we were able to obtain an arrest warrant for Nichole Rice.
Rice was eventually arrested here on the Minot Air Force Base, where she was working as a civilian. Now, for most cold cases, this is where the story ends. But for this one, it's only the beginning of what's to come in the courtroom. The day after her arrest, and after spending a night in jail, Nichole Rice appeared here in a courtroom in the Ward County Courthouse for her initial hearing.
This is the state of North Dakota versus Nichole Erin Rice. Ms. Rice is charged with murder, and you understand that charge?
Yes, sir.
The courtroom was filled with people. Nichole's parents, recent husband, and other family and friends. Anita's parents were also in the courtroom, waiting to see what the judge set their daughter's alleged killer's bail at. Judge Richard Hager set a cash bond of $120,000 and her corporate surety bond at $250,000. That same day, Nichole posts bail. 6 months later was the first time Nichole appears back in court, this time for her preliminary hearing after it was rescheduled 4 times. Her defense team tried to get the case dropped, but is unsuccessful.
The charge is murder, class AA felony. How do you plead, man? Guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty, Your Honor.
After that, court dates continue to be pushed back until the defense requested a hearing regarding the DNA in the case. This hearing is where the defense introduces an alternate suspect, Devin Hall. Hall was the Montana felon who arrived in Minot around the time of Anita's murder.
Does that state that Devin's grandmother had reached out and told somebody that Devin had told her he had possibly killed a young lady in Minot?
That's through like third or fourth party, but that's what it says, yes.
Hall remains a focal point of defense for Nichole because of his previous involvement with women in other crimes.
If this was the first case, he breaks in, doesn't have a sexual encounter with the person, kills them, and then in subsequent cases doesn't kill them, and the escalation would be a sexual escalation rather than a murder escalation, and that's an incredibly unusual pattern.
Then a gag order is granted. Everyone involved in this case is barred from speaking to the public or to the press. The trial is then moved to Grand Forks and is set for January 2025.
I think that it is not possible for either Ms. Rice or the state to get a fair trial in this matter.
Then another delay hits, this time a combination of problems. Minot's police chief, John Klug, who was a police officer at the time of Anita's murder, becomes the focus of an investigation himself for various alleged conduct within the department. And a new report about Anita's body is submitted into the record. Also, Nichole's main attorney leaves the law firm she's with. All of these things combined forces the judge to push the trial to March. Which brings us to present day. Rice will be on trial for the Class AA murder of her roommate nearly 18 years after her death. She faces life in prison without the possibility of parole. But is there enough evidence to convince 12 jurors beyond a reasonable doubt that she committed the crime? Nichole Rice's trial is set to take place next week in Grand Forks. KX News will be there as it kicks off. Until then, thank you for joining us here for this KX News special. I'm Kiara Brown. Have a good night, everyone.